In 1987, India had carried out a massive military exercise in Indo-Chinese border on the Himalayan mountain ranges. It was a gigantic military showdown that comprised not only a large army that comprised of 150,000 infantrymen, numerous artilleries and tanks, but also several squadrons of air force as well. This huge deployment was in addition to the 50,000 strong army that was already deployed a few months before in response to the encroachment of Chinese soldiers at Sumdurong border in Arunachal Pradesh. Even though the international community feared the onset of another Indo-Chinese war, the matter was later settled amicably. What was the issue at Sumdurong? What prompted India to conduct such a large military exercise in the perilous Himalayan mountain ranges? Let's learn about this development and the lessons that India learned from this exercise in this video. The defeat in 1962 war against China was undoubtedly a huge blow to Indian morale. The Indian forces were wholeheartedly determined to overcome this humiliation at any cost. But the policy that Indian government had adopted was not to provoke China. Hence, only a few handful soldiers were stationed at the Chinese border. But the Chinese strategy was to take advantage of this policy. 2 steps forward and then pretending to be friends 1 step backward. This has been their approach. Problems began when People's Liberation Army encroached into Sumdurong Valley in Tawang district of Arunachal Pradesh in the summer of 1986. These regions were in the close proximity of Namkha Valley, where India had faced a major setback during the Indo-China War in 1962. By violating the mutual agreements that allowed only temporary constructions in the disputed area, the Chinese army began building permanent camps. Soon, the patrol wing of 5th Mountain Division of Indian Army found this and reported the violation. Sumdurong was important as the Chinese could reach the Indian Defence Force in Tawang swiftly. Division Commander Major General Jimmy Singh was well aware of this fact. Immediately, he sent out a group of armed soldiers along with 81 mm mortar to the nearby Lungrula Valley for surveillance. They were ordered to fire at Chinese soldiers if they tried to cross the valley. He was fully supported by his superior, Lieutenant General Narhari. Though they were instructed not to unnecessarily provoke the Chinese army by Delhi and the Eastern Army Command, the 5th Division decided to take required measures for self-defense. The first step was to deploy an army to swiftly push back the encroaching Chinese soldiers. But it was not easy to provide artillery backup for the infantry, as the said location was about 15 kilometers from the nearest main road. It was very challenging to maneuver the hazardous mountain ranges for the safe transit of artillery. At that time, the Chief of Army was General Krishna Swami Sundarji. He was one of the most brilliant military strategists that independent India has ever seen. He was briefed about the grave situation in Arunachal by Lieutenant General Narhari, and he visited the location in no time. By that time, the Chinese army had already built a helipad as well. Even though India officially expressed their anger on this issue, China paid scant regard to it. Convinced that China was trying to solidify their presence in the area, General Sundarji decided to take critical measures. After much discussions with his commanders, he re-evaluated the defensive and offensive measures required at Tawang, owing to the lack of basic infrastructure in the region. The commanders requested for 1,200 mules to swiftly transport the arms and ammunitions. To this, General Sundarji replied, "Why should we use mules when we have the latest transport helicopters?" In fact, it was around that time that India had procured modern Mi-17 helicopters from Soviet Union. Upon the request from the Army Chief, Air Chief Marshal Denis LaFontaine straightway assigned the 127 helicopter unit to serve the army. The unit was split into 2. One was assigned to Siachen and the other to Tawang. Their sole mission: transport soldiers and cargo to the intended location at any cost. In the days that followed, numerous sorties were carried out by this unit. In fact, a complete infantry brigade was brought in and deployed in and around Sumdurong Valley. Within a span of just 6 months, General Sundarji was able to successfully transport the required number of arms and ammunition, set up an arms depot, build a helipad, and arrange sufficient engineering support in the area. In short, what was just a basic observation post a few months ago got transformed into a full-fledged forward base in no time. China had already established a large military presence at the Tibetan border. But by then they had started counteracting against the recent movements by the Indian Army. By the beginning of 1987, China had also started ramping up their presence with 20,000 soldiers along the border. India tried to defuse the mounting tensions by working together with China. But India's proposal that they will withdraw their army if China also withdraws theirs was stubbornly dismissed by the Chinese authorities. To up the ante, they even deployed 8 more divisions in eastern Tibet. Clearly, China's strategy was to intimidate India using a power projection. General Sundarji was undeterred and was determined to show the world and China that Indian military was not the same as back in 1962. Subsequently, during the same year, he secured permission from the government to conduct a military exercise at the border. By that time, India had already developed around 50,000 troops in Arunachal Pradesh. In addition to that, 10 more army divisions and many more squadrons of Indian Air Force were brought in for this exercise. Air Force had also employed their heavy-lift helicopter Mi-26 during this exercise. General Sundarji initiated the military exercise with a tactic warning to the Chinese that even though India acknowledges that there are border issues with China, such provocations would not be tolerated in the future. The stated objective of the exercise was apparently to ascertain how fast military can be redeployed from Assam region to Sumdurong if required. But the original intent of the operation was quite obvious. That was a clear warning that any such misadventures would be met with prompt retaliation, and that India can easily match the Chinese army numerically. In many locations, Indian and Chinese soldiers were practically standing face to face, separated by just a few meters. The situation continued like this for many months. The supplies for far-off military posts were provided completely through air. The Western nations assumed that this will result in another Indo-China war. Though India firmly countered the Chinese aggression with an iron fist on one hand, India also extended an olive branch by carrying out diplomatic discussions aimed at peace. In May 1987, the Indian External Affairs Minister N.D. Tiwari visited Beijing en route to Pyongyang in North Korea. He informed his Chinese counterparts that India wished for harmony and would not like to further complicate the situation. China had never imagined that India would react so strongly against their encroachment, so they accepted India's offer for peace as a face-saving measure. Subsequently, both armies conducted a flag meeting and withdrew to their former positions. Today, it is quite evident that India has been using similar tactics to defend China's recent aggressions. For its peaceful development, a strong nation must balance its soft power with hard power. Jai Hind.